Welcome to my review of Rogue One, a Star Wars story directed by Gareth Edwards, a sci-fi war film centered on the daughter of the infamous architect of the mass-destructive Death Star as she and a group of rebel alliances seek to track down the plans of the Death Star with the hopes of finding a way to destroy it. So in case you don't already know, I really love The Force Awakens that came out last year. It's actually one of my favorite films of last year, #1 to be exact, along with Mad Max Fury Road. If you want to know more of my thoughts on The Force Awakens, then I would recommend you go check out my review or go check out my best of 2015 video. But as for Rogue One, which is of course, as I've already stated, directed by Gareth Edwards, who did 2013's Godzilla, which unlike a lot of people, I actually don't think is terrible. I don't think it's a great film, but I do think it is a well-directed film, particularly in its visuals and the way Gareth Edwards is able to play around with suspense, which would make sense to bring on such a director to take on a more darker take on the Star Wars series. What's important to know going into this film is that this doesn't have that fantastical wonderment that Star Wars is often associated with. This is not a fantasy film in the slightest. It's really a gritty war film, or at least it's as gritty as Star Wars is allowed to be. It's kind of like a Star Wars version of Saving Private Ryan. And I do believe using the term dark to describe this film is justifiable because there actually is some complexity behind all of the set pieces, behind all of the spectacle. Even to an extent, I've heard some people say that they see something political within all that stuff. While still remaining in the confines of a PG-13 rating and the Star Wars brand, this movie does paint a seemingly realistic portrait of war, and it conveys this through the use of practical effects, CGI, tasteful amounts of CGI, might I add, and some truly brilliant camera work. This is an extraordinary looking film with the use of its shadowing and the very deep blacks. And just in case you're wondering, no, there aren't any Jedi, no, there aren't any lightsaber duels or anything like that. So if you're somebody who's a fan of the dogfights, you're a fan of the militarized combat, then this is going to be your film. There are two types of Star Wars fans, at least when it comes to spectacle. There are the people who love the lightsaber duels, and there are the people who love the other stuff, the dogfights. I tend to be the one who loves the lightsaber duels, so, that's just a side note. Now, one other very important thing to know about this film is that I would say a good 75-80% of the dialogue is expository. It consists of a lot of, here's what we're doing, this is how we do it, this is where we need to go, etc. Also throw in some pieces of dialogue that tread the lines of being melodrama, but then again, this is Star Wars, so. Unfortunately, it's all of this that doesn't really leave a whole hell of a lot of room for some deep characterization. The characters I don't think are flat, and there is some complexity to them. However, I never felt like I really knew these characters. I never really felt all too attached to these characters, with maybe the exclusion of two, which I will talk about in a minute. However, what I will praise is that these are characters that have done and will do questionable things. So in other words, yeah, they're heroes, but only because, well, the Empire, they're just kind of so shitty. As for the performances as a whole, they're all pretty damn good, especially Felicity Jones, who plays Jyn. And what I really like about her is that there's a lot of subtlety to the performance. There's especially one scene where she's having to show a lot of emotion, but yet she's holding back the emotion, which I think is kind of a tricky thing to do. I also really like her stance and how she walks. She walks with a lot of authority, but at the same time, it is feminine, which is kind of cool. There's also K2SO, who's voiced by Alan Tudyk, who also did the voice of the squawking chicken in Moana, and no, I'm not bullshitting. He provides the film with a lot of the comedic relief, and I did like his character. In fact, he's kind of the only person who provides any kind of comedic relief, actually. But if you really want to know the two best characters in the entire film, in my opinion, it would easily be Donnie Yen's character, who is a blind man in the film with this really badass staff, and Wen Zhang's character as well. The movie doesn't focus on them a whole lot, but I wish they did because I felt like out of all the characters, they were the most interesting, and I felt like their backstory actually had something more interesting going on it versus maybe the others. And I must say that there are some scenes with them that I actually did find to be kind of moving. Now, one character that you might be wondering about is Darth Vader, and I'll just say this. He's not in the film that much. He only has like 2 scenes. So if you're going to see Darth Vader, you're going to be pissed. He maybe has like 4 minutes of screen time total. Though to make up for it, the screen time he gets, it's probably the most intimidating Darth Vader has ever been, particularly in one scene that is really fucking badass. As for last statements, there is a bit of a midsection that does kind of drag given the very exposition heavy film that this film is. It does kind of become a little exhausting. However, after that midsection, this film does indeed become a war film. It becomes Saving Private Ryan. Overall, I don't think Rogue One, a Star Wars story, is the best Star Wars in the series. I would probably rank it number 4, 1 being Empire Strikes Back, 2 being The Force Awakens, 3 being Return of the Jedi, and 4 being, of course, Rogue One. And the prequels, well, it's 3, 2, 1. Unlike The Force Awakens, I really can't say that I see myself putting this in my top 10 this year. I have seen this movie twice, and I did like it more the second time. However, I didn't love it like I did with The Force Awakens seeing it the second time. Rating Rogue One is kind of tricky because there are things that I do love about it, but as a whole, I can't say that I'm quite there. However, I do have just a shit ton of respect for this film, given just the level of maturity that this film actually has. This is a film that was done by a director that actually takes the material seriously, actually wants to do right by the fans. It's not directed by a fetish filmmaker like Zack Snyder. So with all that said, I'm going to give Rogue One, a Star Wars story, a very strong 3.5 out of 5. So there you have it, Rogue One. It is a good movie. It is worth seeing. It's a nice little appetizer before the full course comes out next year. So with all that said, I'm Colin Kirkland, and thank you so much for watching.